So it's day 22 of Ellen's keynote study streak, and those who are joining newly to this session, I would like to inform that in the last 22 days we have covered a lot of remedies, and just yesterday we discussed about chamomilla and senna. So in senna there is a very beautiful relationship mentioned for the remedies drosera, spongia, and I intended to take drosera and spongia today, but I also thought that let me cover remedies which are more related to such conditions today. So we'll cover 4 to 5 remedies today, and the main remedies being, let's start with aconite. So normally it is the first remedy that we always think of in many complaints, but there is a condition in which conditions apply. It's like that. In homeopathy, every time conditions apply is there, whether you believe it or not, and you have to understand whether individualization is there or not. So the first thing that we read about aconite from Allen's keynotes is complaints caused by exposure to dry, cold air, dry north or west winds, exposure to draught of cold air while in perspiration, bad effects of checked perspiration. So you have a complete detail of where the air is coming from. Right now the monsoon season is in big flow in India, and it is actually the western southwest winds. Usually aconite is predisposed to northwest winds, but you can consider west wind also to be aggravating aconite. But if there is more of element of damp, then it gets ruled out. For some cases you can definitely think about it. Then second condition which is there for aconite is bad effects from checked perspiration. So you never know that these children who are stuffed up in deep thick clothes, they have perspiration which is suppressed, which is not brought out, and they are getting stuffed up inside the cloth which they are put in. You will need to give them aconite if you find the mental attitude according to what is mentioned in further lines. It is generally indicated in acute or recent cases occurring in young persons, especially girls of a full plethoric habit who lead a sedentary life, persons easily affected by atmospheric changes, dark hair, eyes, rigid muscular fiber. So you have a very beautiful line, and you need to understand that it is generally indicated in acute or recent cases. So something that happens in within the first few hours, like 6 hours or 8 hours or 12 hours, you should think of uh, aconite as the one of the first remedies, provided you have something else which is mentioned further, which is great fear and anxiety of mind with great nervous excitability, afraid to go out, to go into a crowd where there is excitement or many people to cross the street. So there is constant fear and anxiety in the mind, and there is a nervous excitability. So you see that there is someone who is restless. Whenever you are examining, he or she may be restless. Whenever he or she is coming in clinic, you will see that he or she is restless. So you will think of prescribing aconite only in these conditions. If the person is sitting quietly in a solitude or in a corner, don't think of giving aconite, because that is what is the last line which is mentioned in Allen's keynotes. We'll come to it very soon. The countenance, which is the face is expressive of fear. The life is rendered miserable by fear, is sure that his disease will prove fatal, predicts the day he will die, great fear of death during pregnancy. So you have someone who is very much fearful. You can see the expression of fear on the face. He's scared as if someone has scared him right now by some object or by some act, and the disease has actually jolted him and given him the push to feel in a negative way, and then he will predict what is wrong with him, how will things go wrong, how will he die if the disease gets worse, something, and he'll just make a mountain out of a molehill. Then you have someone who is restless, anxious, does everything in great haste. So it's but obvious, in natural state of mind, anyone who is anxious, anyone who doesn't know what will happen next, he will get aggravated and he will, get to do things in more faster way, so that he can cover up the time and also feel good if the thing is completed on time. Must change position, often everything startles him. Hahnemann says, when aconite is chosen homeopathically, you must above all observe the moral symptoms and be careful that it closely resembles them. The anguish of the mind, body, restlessness, the disquiet not to be allayed. So you have someone who is sitting in solitude, sitting quietly, who does not respond much. They should not be thought of giving aconite. The patient should be anxious, or the relatives will tell you that he was very anxious at home, and if you make him sit for a while in clinic, you will see that they are very restless, very anxious in the clinic as well. This mental anxiety, worry, fear accompanies most trivial ailment. So it can be a normal cold, cough, fever. It can be something that is much more worse, but it will be mostly functional. Nothing goes to pathological in aconite. You have to understand that it is the first stage of inflammation in which aconite and belladonna will be indicated. Belladonna more further, but aconite will be more in the first stage. Music is unbearable. It makes her sad. Similar to natrum cave and sabina, which have their different presentations. Pains are intolerable. They drive him crazy. He becomes very restless at night. On rising from a recumbent position, the red face becomes deathly pale, or he becomes faint or giddy and falls, and he fears to rise again, often accompanied by vanishing of sight and unconsciousness. So you have someone who is like very much restless, lying down position, he feels better, or he keeps on restless, and when he gets up, the entire blood flow which has traveled or migrated to the head and helped him in becoming anxious, that becomes deathly pale, and he becomes faint, giddy, and he becomes unconscious also. Now this is the line which you need to remember. It is indicated for the congestive state of inflammation just before localization takes place. So you have some remedy which is working on the functional state where the functions have changed but the localization has not happened, and you will think of aconite in such conditions. Then we have some remedy which is so beautifully mentioned, that there is cough, croup, dry, hoarse, suffocating, loud, rough, croaking, hard ringing, whistling on expiration. So I cannot explain each word in how it will represent. Maybe if you are a part of my cough workshop in future, which I plan to take, I will give you elaborate cough videos to see, and you will understand how different coughs will present in your clinic. What is hoarse cough, what is paroxysmal cough, what is 2 paroxysm, 3 paroxysm, what is racking, what is retching, etc., etc. But here what you have is something that is dry. You can understand from that, you cannot bring out. You have something that is loud and rough. It troubles the patient, and when he expires, there is more of a whistling sound. If it happens on inhalation, the remedy to be thought is spongia. Cough from dry cold winds or drafts of air. Draft of air is very important for aconite, and you need to think about draft of air as a modality or a causative factor in presentation of complaints. Amenorrhea in plethoric young girls after fright to prevent suppression of menses. Convulsions of teething children, Heat, jerks, twitches of single muscles, child gnaws its fist, frets and screams, skin is hot and dry, and high fever. So you have different components which are being brought about together. There are convulsions, there is a case of dentition who will have a convulsion, someone who has twitches and jerks and single parts with it is affected. The child is gnawing its fist, he is trying to fight off something, fend off something, and the skin is dry, hot, and there is high fever. So there are almost 8 to 10 components which are brought over here, and if you try to understand, they will be presented to you in the entire spectrum which is mentioned, or individually also if it is not mentioned in an entire spectrum. Then you have fever in the aconite, which is having skin which is dry and hot, face is red and pale, and especially it is red and pale alternately. So sometimes he will look very flushed, sometimes he will look very pale, and this will be a very good observation. Rather than asking to parents, you should observe it yourself if you can. Then there will be a lot of thirst for cold water. Of course, there will be intense restlessness, nervousness, tossing about in agony, and becoming intolerable towards the evening, and especially when he or she is going to sleep. The last line which says is that aconite should not be given simply to control the fever, because it is indicated for a special purpose. It is indicated, it has its special indications, and we need to obey those special indications. This is what I started the session with. You should know that there are conditions apply in all cases in homeopathy, rather than just giving it as a alternating medicine or intercurrent or in between or with the other medicines to control the fever. Especially for fever, you should not just give aconite right away. You should think about how it is useful in certain conditions and not in all conditions. Last but not the least, in typhoid fever cases which may look like typhoid, we shouldn't give it. It may damage. I don't know how it damages, but maybe it needs a more of pathophysiological correlation, which we can find out in later workshops. Modalities in the evening and night when the pains become unsupportable. In the warm room, when the person is rising from the bed, when he is rising from the bed, and when he is lying on one affected side. That affected side means, suppose there is cough, or there is accumulation of cough, or there is kind of a pain in certain part of the body, and he lies down, he will have pain. He cannot lie on that side where there is pain. That will be affected side lying aggravates. The other remedies being heparin and nux moscata. Amelioration is from open air, like the remedies alumina, maca, pulsatilla and sabina. You have relationship of aconite to coffea, which is very similar. It acts on nerves, it acts on these mental states more predominantly than on the physical body. So you need to differentiate remedies which act on more on physical plane, more on mental plane. So you can see that it is related to coffea in fever or sleeplessness, it is related to arnica in traumatism, and to sulfur in all the cases where you need to, there is a case of sulfur and you need to prescribe aconite as the acute, think of it and prescribe. So we finish aconite, and I hope it's giving you an idea about in the last 22 days how we have covered all the different remedies and how you all can go back to those videos. It is also available on YouTube, it is available in Instagram, of course, it is available in Spotify, it is available in Facebook, and you can see how whatever is written, of course I need to share because those are the golden letters, but something of how you will see it practically and clinically in your clinics, that is what I have expressed. Let's go to the second remedy. The second remedy is bromium from Allen's keynotes. It acts best but not exclusively on persons with light blue eyes, flaxen hair, light eyebrows, fair delicate skin, blonde, red cheeked and scrofulous girls. Sensation of cobweb on the face. The remedies being baryta borax, graphitis, and you see that there is stony hardness of some tuberculous glands, swelling of the glands, especially of the lower jaw or the throat. So you can see that there is goiter in some patient based upon the descriptions which are given. You can think about prescribing bromium. If it is thyroid submaxillary parotid testis, think about bromium. Then there is fan-like motion of the LNSI. So there is a kind of an air hunger which all such patients who have fan-like motion of LNSI, you can see, like the remedies antemtart, the remedies lycopodium, and in those cases you can think of remedies which are specifically indicated, whatever be the condition. If it is externally observed by you as a strong observation, think about giving these remedies. Bromium is prescribed for sailors who suffer from asthma, especially when they come back on shore. So they are much better when they go to sea, because this is the natural modality of bromium. They feel much better when they are at sea, but they get aggravated when they come back from sea, because that condition predisposes for them to feel better. Then there is a condition which is known as diphtheria. It's not seen much now, or not at all. Diphtheria, where the membrane forms in the pharynx, begins in the bronchi, trachea or larynx and extends upwards. So now, whether diphtheria is existing or not existing, you have to understand the different presentation of symptom over here. And that different presentation is that something that is mentioned about happening in bronchi, trachea, larynx and extending upwards. So colds that travel upwards. So suppose the patient will come to you and he will share some symptoms that lot of cough has happened, and now in the last 2 days lot of cough happened, there is lot of whistling in the chest, and now I can feel that there is coryza which is coming. Think about bromium in those cases. So colds that traveled upwards, you should think of bromium. Chest pains running upwards, bromium. Then you have membranous and diphtheritic croup, much rattling of mucus during cough, but no choking. So if you have a patient who almost looks like he will choke on the cough because they seem to be threatened, they will feel stuffed, think about remedies, hepa, sulf and timtat. But if they don't seem to be choking or they can bring out the cough, think about bromium. If there is no expectoration at all and it is a loose cough, think about antimtab. Okay. Then we have croupy symptoms, which are the cough related symptoms with hoarseness during whooping cough and gasping for breath. So you'll have someone who is gasping for breath, but that is gasping for breath and not the cough which is choking them. If the cough chokes them, think about remedies like intemtart, or even you can think of spongia. Then there is difficulty in breathing, which is dyspnea, cannot inspire deep enough as if breathing through a sponge, or the air passages were full of smoke, or there is vapor of sulfur, rattling, sawing, voice inaudible. So someone who has cough, who has dry cough, who cannot breathe well, and he's talking in whispers, those cases will, and there is danger of suffocation from mucus in the larynx. So he feels that there is some mucus in the larynx which is troubling me, I cannot bring out, or it's little expectorating. Those cases you can think of bromium. If you auscultate the patient. Now this is where the ability of a physician lies. If the patient complains to you that there is lot of cough in the chest, when you examine them, you find that there is no cough on auscultation. But yet the patient, after a physical checkup, he will tell you that I still feel the cough is coming here and it gets full over. A lot of whistling, lot of wheezing, something which is troubling me. Think about bromium. But in cases of antim-tart, there is more cough in the bronchi. You will 99.99% get something that is occluding the bronchi somewhere or the other. It can be middle or the lower zone, especially for antim-tart. In those cases, think of antim-tart as the first prescription. Now, next we have something that is cold sensation in larynx on inspiration, like the remedies rust ox and sulfur. Better after shaving. I've never experienced this in my practice. I don't know who has experienced. Maybe we can ask someone who can explain this, how the patients would describe it, because it looks like it's simple verbatim, but I don't think so. If it is aggregated from shaving, we know the remedy carbohydrates. We have been writing it through the ages in all our exams. Then in cardiovascular system, you have something which is related to the athletes, gymnasts in growing boys, hypertrophy of the heart from gymnastics in growing boys, from calisthenics in young girls if it happens, the remedy is causticum. Then we have physometra, which is loud emission of flatus from the vagina. It's an air which is blocked and it is released suddenly. There is also another remedy which is lycopodium. Then there is membranous dysmenorrhea, which is like lot of cramps with lot of shreds of menstrual blood. Other remedy being laccan. You have to compare bromium with croup and croupy affections. The other remedies are also, which are similar, are chloralum, hydratum, hepar, iodum and spongia. After iodum has failed in cases of goiter, think about bromium. Bromium has cured croup after failure of iodum, phosphorus, hepar and spongia, and after relapses if in goiter or in different cases where iodum was indicated, you can think of bromium. So we have a remedy. We discussed two remedies so far. Aconite, which is very restless. 99% of the times you will see that there is restlessness, there is lot of mental anxiety. Someone who is sitting silently, quietly in a corner may not be needing aconite. You will think of some other remedies to save your patient from the jaws of the disease. Then we have the remedy bromium, which is having something that happens first in the chest, like patient would complain that cough started first and then the coryza came, cold that travel upward, and then you will have difficulty in breathing and the other symptoms which give you the presentation of asthma. Now let's go to the other remedy, which is drosera. Yesterday we studied about Sina. In cases where drosera does not help, Sina will cure them. So let's see what is there in drosera and then we will compare it with Sina, what we studied yesterday. So something we have in drosera, it is the top remedy for whooping cough, and there are violent paroxysms. So any good homeopath or any bad homeopath must have given, I would not say bad homeopath, I would say that there is more of someone who doesn't know anything much in detail. He hasn't probed because he did not have the ability, and he felt that there is kind of need for quick prescription rather than take a detailed history. So you have someone who is, any patient who is having cough, I give drosera. Any patient who has whooping cough or a lot of paroxysms of cough, I give drosera. You can do like that, but the problem is that it will palliate a few cases and bring out the symptoms in a wild manner later on. If you want to avoid that, you should individualize the case. It is not always that you need to take an entire case for 20, 30, 45 minutes. It is just a few seconds of observation, few minutes of case taking, and few minutes of examination, and then you have something which is coming in correlation with the details that you've taken from the patient, and something that comes from your mind, from your study. Allen's keynotes is by far the best way to prepare yourself for quick prescriptions, whether it is chronic, whether it is acute. So by the time I finish Allen's keynotes, hopefully I think in July we should finish it. If it extends to August, we'll see. But once I finish Allen's keynotes, there will be a webinar on how you can use Allen's keynotes for quick prescriptions, how you can use Allen's keynotes for confirming your physical particulars, physical generals, observations, etc. etc. This is going to be something that is practically useful and needed, much needed, I would say. So let's go to the remedy drosera. And we have something that is having whooping cough, not like I cough, but something much more, with violent paroxysms which follow each other rapidly. It's scarcely able to get breathe, large, and if he wakes at early morning and coughs, then the remedy is focus cacti. If he is going to sleep with the cough, the remedy is drosera. Then there is, in drosera, there is profuse epistaxis during every paroxysm, and minute gun cough during the day or whooping at night. This is there in Corellum rubrum also. Then there is deep sounding cough. So I'm feeling short of words to explain these clinical terms which homeopathic stalwarts have mentioned. But as I said while starting aconite and bromium, I'll be putting together all the videos of my cough patients and coming out with a cough workshop, so you can stay tuned and you will get an idea of how the different coughs sound like. So if it is mentioned deep sounding, hoarse, barking cough, like the remedy verbascum. So something that is, from the tube and you cough in that tube, that is deep sounding cough. Aggravated after midnight. So something that starts after 12 or 1 o'clock, during or after measles. So measles is available now, it's not existing now, but you will have something that is on the skin, some skin troubles that keep on happening. If there is skin troubles in children with the cough, think of drosera. But it has to be continuous cough. It has to be something that racks the patient and happens when they go to sleep. Then you have something which is very interesting. This is what I was constantly mentioning, and that is a spasmodic cough with gagging. So you have to understand the meaning of these different words and bring them together. If it is a spasm and if it is a gagging, imagine the amount of the amount of pressure in the respiratory tract that is going to have. It's going to occlude and give out a spasm and a volcano like reaction, right? If that type of cough you see, the patient is so much distressed that they cannot breathe. Nowadays you have social media, you have WhatsApp, you can get the videos from patient. I would strongly suggest that those who are watching this session new and those who are on YouTube, they go back to my Instagram clinical experiences section. You can scroll to the profile and there are a few cases of cough which I have explained, and you will be able to understand how beautifully you can pick it up from the repertory, you can pick it up from this materia medica. There are a few clinical experiences and I will be starting it again very soon. So meanwhile, you have to understand there is a spasm and gagging in drosera that would predispose you to prescribe drosera. And there is retching and vomiting. You see how beautifully there is combination of spasm, gagging, retching and vomiting. Either it will be spasm and gagging, or it will be retching and vomiting. Someone who is, trying to bring out, those are the cases that will require drosera. Those are the cases that will require coccus cacti. Coccus cacti is much more easier. Drosera is much more difficult to bring out the cough. So yeah, let's proceed. And then we have constant titillating cough in children begins as soon as the head touches the pillow. I need not explain this, it's very much clear. But the other remedies are belladonna, hyos and rumex. Don't forget hyoscyamus, it will have a very strong tickling in the throat. If the patient continues to sleep when there is episode of cough, you can give hyos, provided it is a dry cough and not able to expectorate at all. If the patient has to sit up, there is itching in the throat as soon as he go to lie down, but has to sit up and then he feels better, think of quinine. And rumex, as soon as the least draft of air happens, it will aggravate the cough. So you need to, it should strike your mind when the patient says the symptoms, and you should be ready with your prescriptions by just confirming a few things. It's going to be a beautiful journey if you know how to pick up, where to pick up, and when to prescribe. You may need to change tracks, you may need to change remedy, but it is going to be, it's just like how allopaths do. They change on the antibiotics. If one is not working, they will give a higher antibiotic, they will give something which is a deeper antibiotic or a higher potency. It's just like that in homeopathy. If the one remedy is not working, wait for 6, 8 hours, 12 hours. I'll be undertaking a follow-up workshop very soon where you will understand how acute cases can be managed in follow-ups, how chronic cases will be managed in follow-ups, and a very big announcement is coming before tonight. So stay tuned so that you can get to know and join an upcoming interesting workshop. So nocturnal cough of young persons in phthisis, especially tuberculosis, which means bloody or purulent sputa. Cough aggravated by warmth, drinking, singing, laughing, weeping. Aggravated at lying down and after midnight, which I already shared. During cough, there is vomiting of water, mucus, often bleeding from the nose and the mouth, like the remedies cuprum. Sensation of feather in the larynx exciting the cough. Now, some patients would be able to describe that they have a feeling that something is stuck up in the throat. I feel there is a tickling in the larynx, itching in the larynx. But to define feather specifically requires much more deeper action of the disease. It may happen in some cases, not in all, but you will be able to rely more on the modalities rather than on the sensations. So sensations would help you fill in the examination papers, would help you know about the remedy or something that differentiates one remedy from the other, but modalities are the ones that are going to help you prescribe rather than the sensations. It will be of use, but I would consider it as secondary. Modalities would be more strongly indicated, especially in the acute cases, especially in the coughs. For diseases prevailing during epidemic pertussis, think of drosera. Drosera can be thought in clergyman's sore throat. So you have to understand the deeper meanings. As I shared in bromium, in aconite, when you read a word, it's not just about that word. What is the nature or the background of that word? Clergyman. What do clergymen do? Clergymen deliver sermons, deliver speeches in churches. Because the author was at a time when Christianity was at peak, he wrote about clergymen. But it can be someone who is a public speaker today and he will have the cough problem. In those cases also you can think of drosera. rather than just thinking that it will be someone who is clergyman who will be delivering sermons and only then I will be giving. So every word that you see, you need to go deeper behind the word and understand. Clergyman sore throat with rough, scraping, dry sensation deep in the fauces, voice hoarse, deep, toneless, cracked, and requires exertion to speak. We saw this in the remedy bromium also, that he will probably whisper. The same thing is there in drosera also, but it is although of a lesser quantity. Here there will be more of spasm, more of gagging, more of retching and vomiting, and aggravation at midnight rather than what we saw in bromium. Those who have joined later on, you can go and watch back the session for aconite and bromium, which I undertook very few minutes ago. So if there is also throat related issues, you can think of drosera, no doubt, but you can also think of arum triphyllum, which is one of the most under prescribed remedies, I would say. Especially you should think of arum triphyllum in cases of summer time, when the summer is at peak and there is lot of dry air, or it happens in between after the rains have settled and there is a lull period where there are no rains and the air is dry again. You can get arum triphyllum very easily. Next we have in drosera something that is constricting and crawling in the larynx, hoarseness and yellow or green sputa, laryngeal thysis following whooping cough, bronchial catarrh which follows. The other remedies are Coccus cacti. Drosera, it's very beautifully mentioned as a complementary to Nux vomica. So in patients who don't improve on Nux vomica, if you have given for cough, think about drosera. Drosera also follows well sambucus, sulfur and veratrum. So you can think of drosera in cases where you have given sulfur or veratrum as a constitutional, or if you have given calcarea carb, phosphorus or sulfur as a, or pulsatilla as a deeper remedy. And you also have to compare drosera with sina, with corallium rubrum, with cuprum, with ipecac, with sambucus. So I have a kind of plan which I'll be sharing in the cough workshop if you would be attending, and it will be announced on the page. But the plan is like, there are remedies which are indicated in first 6 hours or 12 hours, then there will be remedies that will be indicated in the next 12 hours or 18 hours, and then there will be remedies that will be indicated in the second or the third day. Whenever the patient presents with symptoms, if those are the indications you see, think about those remedies. It is just not, you go and read the materia medicas and get confused and then they prescribe one, patient does not get better, he will go away, he will not be able to give you confidence for treating acute cases. You will just be that doctor who treats itching and something that is a chronic problem, osteoarthritis, and don't be that homeopath. Be a homeopath who is active, who is vibrant, and who gives result in acute cases more than in chronic cases, or on par with chronic cases. So we finish the third remedy for today, which is drosera. First two remedies were aconite and bromium, and now we proceed to the remedy sambucus, which is another very beautiful remedy, very misunderstood I would say. And then we have the remedy spongia. So the next remedy that we have is sambucus. So sambucus is a remedy which has again bad effects from mental emotions, anxiety, grief, or sexual indulgence, like the remedies phosphoric acid and caliphos. I have in fact also seen sambucus patients getting fright, aggravation from fright. It is one of the remedies singularly mentioned in one of the repertories for ailments from fright, on par with opium. In fact, we will see here in relationship as well. So it is adapted to diseases of scrofulous children which affect the air passages especially. So predominant action we see on the respiratory organs. Persons who are formerly robust, fleshy, suddenly become emaciated. like the remedies iodum and tuberculinum, and edematous swelling of various parts of the body, especially leg, instep, and feet. Once upon a time, this was in very early in my practice, and I remember a patient who developed a very severe cough, and she had come after a good exposure to cold air in her in a village in Gujarat, and she told me that she also developed lot of swelling of her ankles in the last 3-4 days, but she expressed that I was traveling since the last 4-5 days continuously from one city to another, village to another, but it was a part of the symptomatology, and that is why we can think of sambucus in those cases. Then we have something that is very peculiar and written in bold, which is profuse sweat over the entire body during the waking hours. On going to sleep, dry heat returns. So as soon as the patient is awake, there is lot of sweating, lot of sweating, lot of sweating. And as soon as the patient goes to sleep, there is a dry heat. Mothers will always complain that when the child is active throughout the day, there is no problem. But when the child goes to sleep, fever starts. Those are the cases that will require sambucus. You will not have exact expression what is mentioned in the source books, but you will have a bit of twist in the clinics, and that is what you should prepare for. Nothing is going to be easy. You'll have to understand the analogy, and if you understand the analogy, I have been speaking about it in the past few sessions, and it needs a better explanation with different examples, which I will definitely come up with. But if you understand the analogy, you are going to master homeopathy like never before. So you have someone who has dry heat when they go to sleep, but profuse sweat when they wake, or during waking hours they have sweat, but no one would observe that. But when they go to sleep, dry heat will come in. That is the observation of mother, because that is when she touches him, or she knows that it's heat that is coming up. Dry coryza of infants. Dalkamara is mentioned as one of the only remedies in Doric Medina Medica for snuffles of children. But don't ignore nux vomica, don't ignore sambucus. These are the other two remedies which you will need in your practice for small babies that develop coryza, that develop snuffles, and you will get much more better results and satisfactory results than any other remedy or any other pathy. Sambucus has nose which is dry, completely obstructed, preventing breathing and also nursing. So the child will have difficulty in breathing, child will have difficulty in eating, drinking, everything, and the mother will complain that he is not feeding well. The problem will actually be in the respiratory tract, where the child is keeping on breathing through the mouth, which will be a observation for the mother, or maybe if you can observe in your clinic. Other remedies mentioned are ammonium carb and nux vomica. Then we have something which is difficulty in breathing or dyspnea. Child awakens suddenly, nearly suffocated, face livid, blue, sits up in the bed, turns blue and gasps for breath, which it finally gets. An attack passes off but is again repeated. Child inspires but cannot expire. So someone who has difficulty of breathing, and they do not actually turn blue, but they become a bluish tinge of the face comes up, and I have seen that, and that was a time when I have prescribed this child Ipecac for an incessant cough which was lasting a week or so, but because I found something very strong for Ipecac, I prescribed it. Nevertheless, in sambucus, what we see is someone who inspires but cannot expire. If he tries to sleep, there will be gasping of breath. The color may change to dark, wheatish, or kind of a bluish tinge, because there is venous congestion. And then even if he sleeps into attack. He sleeps having the cough and the episodes of cough, difficulty of breathing, accessory muscles are being used. In fact, in the further lines, you will see there is a mention that there are spasms of the chest. So the mothers will tell you that there are accessory muscles which are more active. These the platysma, the the muscles on the sides of the chest, on the abdomen, those are more active than the actual muscles which is diaphragm which should be working. In those cases, you think of sambucus, but don't forget to look at bromium and spongia as well. Try to differentiate all the three remedies. Going further, we have attacks of suffocation as in the last stage of croup. So someone who is threatened with suffocation, progressed, or you can say on par with antim tart. I would rate sambucus as a remedy which is on par with antim tart. And you have cough which is suffocative with crying children, worse about midnight, hollow deep whooping cough with spasms of the chest, with regular inhalations but sighing exhalation. So someone who is not able to bring out the breath, and if at all he brings out the breaths, it is more of a irregular breathing pattern, and this is because there is no space in the chest because the air cannot be brought out, the muscles are not strong enough, the body is occluded, the passage is occluded with cough, or with, I would say it's more of an allergic in nature rather than more of a catarrhal in nature. Okay, and there are good solid explanations which I can come up with in the cough workshop when I'll be announcing it. So last but not the least, we have fever, dry heat when he sleeps, on falling asleep. I already spoke about it. And he dreads uncovering, does not take covering. But I don't see this very strongly because many times parents threaten their children that if they don't take the covers, they will get this and that, monster will come. It is a psychological impact which is created. But you will see the other observations and be able to prescribe. If they take covers willingly and sleep, we can give naxomica. So you have aggravation in sambucus during rest when he goes to sleep after eating fruits, or amelioration you see sitting up in bed. Amelioration sitting up is also there in conium, it is also there in hyosemus in the respiratory complaints. Go to boric and you will find it, or in fact in Allen's keynotes also. Motion ameliorates most of the pains, and the pains also disappear during motion. Compare sambucus with China, chlorellum rubrum, chlorellum hydratum again, ipecac, mephitis and sulfur. If arsenic has been given too frequently, which we see many homeopaths doing because they feel that patient is having lot of thirst, damp weather, restless child, give arsenic. Too much arsenic is given, think of sambucus. And one of the very important lines with which I started with sambucus, that there is ailments from fright. In many repertories, sambucus comes under ailments from fright. So in the last line in sambucus in Allen's keynotes, you see that it follows well after opium in bad effects of fright. Someone who is scared and develops complaints has sambucus to be given. So that brings us to the end of the fourth remedy, and we go to the last remedy, which is spongia. So let's turn over to spongia in Allen's keynotes. For the tubercular diathesis, especially adapted to diseases of children, women, light hair, lax fiber, fair complexion, like the remedy bromium. Worse after sleep or sleeps into aggravation, like the remedy lachesis. In fact, we saw in sambucus as well. Sore throat, aggravated after eating sweet things. So someone who has taken sweets and comes to you, lands up in your clinic with cough, with respiratory distress, think of spongia. Again, goiter-like symptoms, swelling and induration of glands, like bromium, think of spongia also. Try to differentiate from the constitution whether it is tubercular in nature, whether it is what complexion, what are the other things mentioned, modalities, and you will find out your remedy. Thyroid glands are swollen even with the chin, with suffocative paroxysms at night, and there is goiter. Awakens in a fright as if suffocating, as if he had to breathe through the sponge. So, to understand this, as if he had to breathe through the sponge, you need to actually see what a sponge looks like. It is porous in nature, and we have taken some parts of understanding sponge in our kingdom workshop. So, you have this remedy which is does not have an entire structure to breathe, and there are some pores in it, to breathe. And if there are pores to breathe and not the entire structure which is available, there is bound to be a kind of a gasping or suffocation. And if you understand this part, your prescription for spongia becomes very easy. Every mental excitement aggravates or increases the cough. Great dryness of mucous membranes of air passages, throat, larynx, trachea, bronchi. This symptom can only be experienced if you examine the patient. Don't rely on the patient telling you that there is cough dry, I cannot bring out the cough. You will find that the chest is full of cough, or you will find that there is kind of a rattling. You will not need to give spongia. In those cases, you will need to give hepar. You may even give entemtart. You may even give some other remedy. But if you examine and you find that there is lot of dryness, there is a dry wheeze more than the other things, dry as a horn, this is what is mentioned by Allen's keynotes. Think of spongia only in those cases. Again, next line we have in Allen's keynotes for spongia: cough which is dry, barking, croupy, rasping, ringing, wheezing. So you understand, you don't have to rely only on the expression of the patient. If it is wheezing, patient may not tell you wheezing. Some educated patients do tell, but try to go and examine, and you will find wheezing more often than the patient complaining about it. And there is a whistling cough. Everything is perfectly dry, no mucus rail. Now, when you go to repertories, when you go to different materia medicas, you will see that this remedy is mentioned for dry cough, which you cannot find in the chest. This requires clinical examination. There is no doubt about it. Don't rely on the patient's words. It is very confusing, believe me. When the patient tells you cough, he may mean that there is expectoration. When the patient tells you that there is there is more dry cough, or there is pain in the tickling in the some part of the organ, there is lot of noise in the chest, go and examine. There are different meanings by different patients, different terminologies that they use from their perspective. You will confound yourself and give something else to the patient than what is required. So try to give something which is needed. In spongia, Allen's keynotes, we have cough, dry, sibilant, like a saw driven through a pine board, aggravated by sweets, cold drinks, smoking, lying with head low, and dry cold winds. So you have some condition of aconite, and aconite, hepar, and spongia. We know these three remedies are Borneo-sense trio for cough. Aggravated also by reading, singing, talking, or swallowing, better by eating or drinking, and also vomitings. There is croup, which is a combination of a cough which is suffocating the patient. We saw this in bromium, we saw this in sambucus, we saw this in aconite also. Anxious wheezing, aggravated during inspiration. If it is aggravated more during expiration, think of aconite. If it is aggravated more before midnight, think about spongia. If it is aggravated before morning, which means after midnight, think of hepar. All the remedies that we see have been working on the respiratory system or the cough component more predominantly, also have action on the cardiovascular system. You saw that in bromium. You see that also in samb over here, which is palpitation, violent with pain and gasping respiration, awakened suddenly after midnight with suffocation and great anxiety, valvular insufficiency before and during menses, and a special case for angina pectoris. Now, believe this is a remedy which is given for angina pectoris, and it's so beautifully mentioned: contracting pain, heat, faintness, suffocation, anxiety, and sweat, which is actually the expression of a patient in angina pectoris, aggravated more after midnight. Then you have something that is working on the male sexual system also, and I think bromium also has that action. It was very less mentioned, or you'll see in other books. Spermatic cord which is swollen, there will be testicles which are swollen, bruised, squeezed after suppressed gonorrhea or maltreated orchitis. Spongia, in relationship we see it is mentioned, it follows well after aconite or hepar when the dryness prevails. So I already told that aconite, spongia and hepar are the three remedies which you should think of in coughs, especially in initial cases of coughs. I would rate also ipecac as one of the top remedies for initial cases of cough. Go back to my ipecac video and you will find what is needed to prescribe ipecac. So if there is mucus which the patient may land up to you with dry cough, think of aconite if it is first 6 hours. If there is nothing in the chest, it's completely clear, aconite will work. If there is dryness in the chest, like a dry wheeze, there is dry cough and there is a kind of a dyspnea, think of spongia. If the mucus has started to accumulate but the patient is fresh and active, think of hepar. If the patient has become dull when the mucus has started accumulating, think of entemtar. And then there are various presentations and expressions. I intend to take this in more detail in the cough workshop, so those who are watching this, they should get the information very soon on the page. And we have spongia which you can compare with arnica, causticum, iodum, lachesis, nux moschata, especially nux moschata where sputa must be loosened and swallowed again. So that's it from me right now, and we discussed many remedies today in a lot of time, almost an hour or so. But those who are watching and those who want to attend an interesting workshop, and a very good announcement awaits you in few hours. So stay tuned, and this is going to revolutionize your practice. So you'll get the information very soon. So that's it from me. Keep inspiring and stay inspired.